Hey guys, it's Matt. Before I start the old-fashioned radio reality show, if we're going to use the comments for a certain purpose, it's better to do that now. I wanted to ask you, if you wanted to put this in the comments right away, do you have a reality glitch in the matrix that's been affecting you in, say, the last year or year and a half? I mentioned this one about a year and a half ago, but it's definitely changed for me in the last year and a half. When I drive out, especially down my road here, going out to the Wawa or whatever I need to do, especially in the morning, but it can happen at any time during the day, there's 2 or 3 birds that fly low to the ground, basically right in front of my car. I've never hit one, but this is a behavior that didn't happen, just did not happen 2, 3, 4 years ago. And it's still happening just as much now than when it first started happening. So all the birds, all the different varieties just changed their behavior with 100 monkey syndrome or some sort of glitch in the matrix. Another one that is, some would write off as trivial. Every time I go, like when you open a little bag of shredded cheese or something, it's kind of torn for you already. It says tear here. You just have to tear the top. And you usually have to be pretty strong to do that. A little old lady would probably struggle. But every time I go to tear something open, where it's made for me to tear it open, my hands are wet. My hands are wet every time. So, or I go to open string cheese, hands are wet. Pull, slip, slide. Like what? Why? This is like, it's similar to the glitch in the Matrix where, you go to plug something in and it should be 50-50. This happens to me. The big end and the little end in the United States, plug something in, and I always have to reverse it. It probably only goes in correctly 20% of the time, 25% of the time. And I know somebody would yell, Matt, you're only noticing it when it goes in incorrectly. Therefore, those incidences seem to increase. I don't think so. I really don't. I pay attention to it and have paid attention to it for 2 years now. If you don't have these experiences and you think the world is completely real the way your 9th grade physical sciences teacher told you in high school, and we're just out to lunch, then put that in the comments. With that being said, welcome back to the old-fashioned radio show for July 2022, where the main theme of this show and wherever it goes is 2.5 years. Unbelievable. They've been doing this to us 2.5 years. First off, where did the time go? We were already in a strange, stalled century, move the century off to the side time loop after the big 2001 job application was submitted. Did they stall it again? Yeah, Matt, it's a loop inside of a loop. They did it again. It's like it's a weird. It's just time itself is weird since 2001, but it's even stranger now. But forget all that. We'll get into that weird shit as we go forward. 2.5 years. There is no group of men and women who eat Subway sandwiches on the pot that are able to coordinate what we've seen to this degree or this precision. It is absolutely mind-boggling. It's evil genius to a degree in which we can't even fathom. And this, is the main theme as we go forward in the old-fashioned reality radio show for July 2022. Unbelievable how they keep it going. Guys, even to us, they've normalized it. They've habituated all of us to a degree with what's going on. The next time the boy cries wolf, people won't react in the same way. It'll be less. So they'll come with another problem. They'll come with another disease, whether it be carried in a mosquito or whatever it may be. Or they already played that theme out with Zika, 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 Zika. But whatever it may be, the next time, you can't get the bull with the red cape to react in quite the same way. The reaction will be lessened. Did they use up all their chips with this thing over the past 2.5 years? No. But we're all kind of normalized to it, habituated to it. All of us, even the normie, is tired of it to a degree. But if you think back, I don't want to revisit March of 2020 for too long, but I was thinking about it yesterday. It was truly, it's easy to say now how, I wasn't scared, Matt, or it was nothing. It was real spooky and real creepy March in April and into the beginning part of May of 2020. And then as we went into the summer, at least here in North America, Australia was going into the winter. I think it was worse probably for Australia going into the winter, but their winter is, it's not like it is here for 12 to 14 states. We were going to the summer and we said, okay, into May, this is how it's going to be, at least for a little while. I don't think even we in this community would have predicted 2.5 years to this degree. And of course, they're not done. Of course, I mean they'll try to wring that washcloth out as long as they possibly can. But it truly, unless you're lying to yourself and you're just so tough, and it was spooky and creepy. March, April, May of 2020, when I'll just talk about what our experience in the United States for anybody listening around the world. Well, your experience was probably similar. It could have been way more severe if you live in Melbourne and other places in the EU, where everything just starts to close and shut down. And remember, at the time, we had a certain understanding of what we thought the world financial markets were, or what the stock market was. Of course, doing what we do and doing the investigations that we do, well, of course, it's rigged and the flash crash wasn't real. But we didn't know how fake the world financial markets were. So with everything closing down, I mean, even most of us in early part of 2020, and for years I've been saying the stock market is basically taking place on a supercomputer. I remember thinking myself, if they don't, how fake is it? If they do this for longer than a month or two, the domino effect, every single major business is going to domino and go out of business. And of course, none of that happened. And if we thought it was 75% fake, the world banking and financial markets, this thing showed us that it was pretty much, for at least the large organizations, the banks, the corporations, 100% fake. The shutdown and disruption, when we were told for decades that in the just-in-time system, everything depends on everything else. Banks lend amongst themselves. LIBOR, if one bank goes down, then they all are related in some way and it'll domino. This thing showed us how fake everything was. And if anything were real, it would have been by the summer of by the summer of 1929. By the summer of 2020, it would have been 1929, the Great Depression, and it would have been magnitudes and magnitudes worse, of course, than 1929, because how reliant everything is on the digital and the just-in-time systems and the large corporations, and nobody farms anymore, nobody grows their own food, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if they wanted that type of situation where you'd have maybe 40,000 humongous gangs from Mad Max the Road Warrior popping up overnight and certain scenes from the movie The Road taking place, if they wanted that, they could create that very easily. At least this time, of course, they did not want that. It showed how managed and controlled everything was to, a level of evil genius, and the world management alone is beyond, in my opinion, human ability. Okay, just the financial part by itself, let alone how they got every nurse and doctor to all sing the same tune and the normies to go along with everything that's presented on the news. There's no way. There's supernatural means that rolls out this reality script that we can see it. It's a reality script. Those that play along inside of it have no idea it's a reality script, and even we don't understand the reality buttons and levers or whatever we would call magic that they're using. But, it is way beyond people sitting around smoking Peter Stuyvesants in a boardroom trying to think shit up. Speaking of Peter Stuyvesant, let's use this example to lighten things up a bit. Quick story. Every single time I look into Peter Stuyvesant or Peter Stuyvesant High School, one thing leads to a next. It's not a complete reality breakdown I run into, but I run into something very strange almost every time I look into it. It was, I guess, a year and a half back where I didn't even know about Peter Stuyvesant High School. We're talking about this over here. Somebody brings this to my attention, Peter Stuyvesant High School, which is right down in the shadow almost of One World Trade Center, or was in the shadow of the towers. That's the Amazon, which is not worth watching at all. It's terrible. The Amazon documentary about Peter Stuyvesant High School, In the Shadow of the Towers, I think it's called, and what happened at the high school when the job application was submitted in 2001. So this time, here's what happened. I heard that there was controversy with their mascot. The Peter Stuyvesant High School is the Peg Legs, Peg Leg Pete. All right, let me stop for a second and provide a minute or a minute and a half of background. Not everybody's going to be equally familiar with Peter Stuyvesant High School, everything we've talked about over the last 3 years. So a minute and a half, and then I'll continue with the story related to my most recent research. I don't know what his exact title was, but say Peter Stuyvesant's the first governor of New York. But it wasn't called New York because it was the Dutch that settled lower Manhattan, or what we call Manhattan today, in the New York surrounding area. The Dutch, probably relatives of Goldmember. So Peter Stuyvesant is Dutch. Isn't that weird? It's the Dutch that kicked out the Native Americans and the indigenous people, told the First Nation Canadians to get out. Well, we live here. We get out, they said. Give you 30 seconds to pack your bags. We come off our ships with our guns. Get your Native American people out of here. And then they ran off, I guess, and populated beautiful areas like Buffalo and things like that. But they kicked them out. All right, they kicked him out. But see, Peter Stuyvesant, he had lost, when he was governor, he was peg-legged. He had lost a leg in a battle somewhere like down in the West Indies or something like that, where, as usual, and like the British did, and all the big colonial powers like the Spanish, and they were killing more indigenous people. Wherever they land their ships, they kill indigenous people. That's what they do. It's like Geico. It's what you do. But he lost a leg in one of the battles. So anyway, the whole history, Peter Stuyvesant High School, has been around 100 years. When they founded it, Peter Stuyvesant and his legend and lure was a big deal. Unlike, they try to cover it up today and it's racist and all that stuff. They adopted the name the Peg Legs. Okay. Now, of course, at some point, this is going to cause a gigantic politically correct problem, a big New York PC problem on multiple fronts. A lot of stuff going on in this witch's brew. You've got the mascot itself, Peg Leg Pete, an insensitive way of presenting a disability. You have Peter Stuyvesant himself, which I'm sure it doesn't take a ton of research and locking yourself into the Library of Congress to see probably owned slaves, or what he did to the Native Americans and indigenous peoples. So you've got all that stuff going on. And I just had heard bits and pieces. In my reality, it's like, well, they're going to get rid of the name Peg Leg, right? Doesn't that make sense? Like, it's amazing they still have it, right? You'd think they would be PC 10 years ago or 20 years ago at this prestigious high school. It's Peter Stuyvesant High School, which grants scholarships to the smartest and most gifted children of diversity. And you'd think they would have done away with it a long time ago and even hidden the name Peter Stuyvesant. So I go looking into it. Have they finally gotten rid of the Peg Leg Pete mascot? And these articles start popping up from the New York Times and the New York Post talking about the collegiate school that goes back to 1600 and some in New York is removing the Peg Leg mascot, and they're replacing it with like a Dutchman, but drawn in a different way, no politically correct issues. So I'm reading these, and then I'm going to the New York Post, and I'm saying to myself, they're not even willing to mention the name Peter Stuyvesant. Has to be Peter Stuyvesant. The mascot's a peg-legged Dutchman. Well, I'm like, they're not even going to mention the name. As I look into this further, there's another prestigious high school in New York City called Collegiate that also has a peg-legged Dutchman as its mascot, and they're the ones that have worked so hard to remove the mascot and replace it. I was attributing this to Peter Stuyvesant High School, but there's another prestigious private school that has the peg leg, and even that says, yes, it's supposed to be Peter Stuyvesant. So let me get this straight. Both use Peg Leg Pete. Both are prestigious private schools in New York City, but one still has the peg leg. The other, Collegiate, has removed the peg leg for a more, they could have used Goldmember, but it's just a more benign Dutchman logo. And I'm like, this is just bizarre. I'm not going overboard with the reality breakdowns here or anything like that. I don't think that collegiate high school came into existence like a Mandela effect. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, isn't it weird? I think I'm following a story on and off about a prestigious New York City high school, private school, that's removing a peg-leg Dutchman that's supposed to be Peter Stuyvesant. Well, of course, I'm thinking I'm following when these articles came out about a 17-person commission and a 400-page report as to why the peg-leg needs to be removed. I think I'm following news on Peter Stuyvesant High School that has the Dutchman, that has the peg leg. No, it's another school 20-some blocks up that's $60,000 a year that also uses the peg leg. What the hell happened if they ever played each other? Did they have football teams? Did they play each other? The peg legs versus the peg legs? Just forget the football game. Just have potato sack races, or no, not potato sack, 3-legged races. You just to see which high school would win any sporting event, whether it be diving, swimming, softball. You don't do any of those events. You just have, when one plays the other peg leg, you have a 3-legged race. You tie the damn legs together. That makes more sense when it's peg leg up against the peg legs. Anyway, sorry. Let's move on to something else. Steffers, who blogs at peaceofmindful.com, who I've mentioned several times, we've looked at some of her articles over the years. She tells us to look out for a new color, a new presentation from the creeps, the magenta coating. Magenta is like a reddish pink, and there's no doubt when she started presenting this to me, we have a long way to go in understanding what the presentation is, but it's almost assured that she's hit on this, and they are making this new magenta presentation like they made the emerald green presentation, or then they probably will continue. Steffer says it probably will switch over to more of a magenta presentation. The emerald green presentation, they've been doing that for decades or even longer. And the best way to start to understand it, if you even want to pause this, go ahead. Search, did you hear what Bono and The Edge and those creeps did in the Ukraine subway? They performed a little concert. Oh, isn't Bono wonderful? Go search YouTube. It'll come right up. Bono and The Edge Ukraine subway concert. The magenta presentation. You'll see it all over the place. Okay, here's potentially why it's significant. We'll ponder. We have a long way to go. But let me just give you some basics on magenta, or potentially what this magenta presentation may be about. All right, let's start with the basics, and even this gets strange very quickly. At least, I don't know what they teach in school now. If you go back to the old century, maybe before it was stalled out, they taught us in first grade, these are the 3 primary colors of which all other colors can be derived. Red, blue, yellow. Okay, then you mix them, you put the glass plates on top when you're in second grade. Ooh, okay, we got it. Now, when you go to look at a cartridge, an inkjet cartridge, the primary colors are cyan, if I'm even pronouncing that right, magenta, and yellow. Okay, black is there as well, sometimes in a separate cartridge. Just look at the color cartridges. So wait a second. If the inkjet cartridge, see, everything to me, everything is like a reality giveaway as to what the dark part of reality is trying to do, trying to destroy everything, trying to completely smash the human experience, cut people off from understanding themselves. It's beyond human coordination. This is just another little example. Maybe you'll think I'm reading into it too much, but I don't think so. So again, this is not that hard to understand. The 3 primary colors that we learned, at least before this century was stalled, all other colors are derived. Red, blue, yellow. Okay. So a color cartridge in an inkjet, when you go to buy it at Staples for $80, is cyan, magenta, and yellow. Okay, cyan is like a blue. Magenta is like a red. But, okay, well, the point is simple. Why doesn't the damn inkjet cartridge use the 3 primary colors? Even this is being bastardized or adulterized or changed. Well, Matt, cyan is like a blue and magenta is like a red. Okay, but it's a constant removal from the normal, and they move in incremental demonic steps. Problem here is magenta is a lack of all color. It's like there's no frequency it doesn't belong on a frequency chart. This is part of the magenta presentation, and Steffers will help us clarify this as the weeks go on. But see, magenta, there is no frequency. It doesn't exist. Okay, this is potentially part of the magenta presentation. It doesn't exist. Okay, well, your brain kind of fills in the gap to create magenta. So in an inkjet cartridge, they're using something that technically doesn't exist to make the other colors. Now, those of you old guards here, or Jedis, we don't exactly understand the ramifications of this, but you can kind of sniff it. The reality is the Terminator. It can never stop. It will never stop. You think that they got, quote, what they call human beings into this state, this normie state. You'd think, oh, we've won. Let's put our feet up and relax for the next 200 years. Whatever the dark part of the screen is, it can never stop. It's the Terminator. It will never stop. So it's like, yeah, we got these human being sons of bitches into this state, and they have the next 20 states planned out. And then when 10 are accomplished, hopefully they will not be accomplished, and they certainly will never be accomplished on people like us. We're immune at this point, absolutely immune. Unfortunately, the people around us are not immune, and they will make these presentations via colors and gematria and codes and themes and the mirror images always being presented in movies. And this is, we've been studying this stuff for a long, long time. But the magenta presentation, maybe it won't pan out. But from what Steffers has showed me so far, there is something to it. Go look at the magenta color whenever you remember. It's like a weird pink. It's like a pink with a little bit of red. And when they make this presentation, knowing that magenta really doesn't exist, to me, it is something related to wanting to move the, quote, their term human being, always moving it into a Ray Kurzweil digital environment, down into the zeros and ones, into, what does this mean? A magenta, a color that doesn't exist, move the human being into a place that doesn't exist. I don't know, but they're sick ways and methods. They never let up. They're the Terminator. And I don't know exactly what the magenta code means to me at this time. And I'm sure Steffers will continue to work on it. But for those that are new, the emerald green presentation is whether it be naturally coming from reality itself, or something that comes from the good part of reality, or that hijacked from the creep side. In some way, whether hijacked good or bad, it represents the illusion of this world, of this reality, to not take it very seriously, to highlight its fluid nature. And it's almost like the next step past that, but I don't know if there is a good side to it. Matt, is there a good side to the magenta presentation? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it now. But again, this is new to us. It's okay, fluid reality illusion, but then what's the next step? They always have a next creepy step, these sons of bitches. And if you take it back to the color wheel on an inkjet, you have the three colors that produce all colors. Magenta, which doesn't exist. Cyan, C-Y-A-N, I don't care how to pronounce it. It doesn't matter, which is an offshoot of blue. That basically is new. It doesn't exist. And then yellow. They do present a normal yellow as one of the three. So it's almost like even the damn primary colors this reality has started to bastardize in what is presented in an inkjet. And see, reality is always on a sliding scale to move what they call a human being farther and farther away from its spiritual self and understanding its true nature. It's not people plot. I don't want any confusion here. Do I think the RAND Corporation, the Tavistock Corporation, with two members from the Trilateral Commission and the Council for Foreign Relations, and one member from Bilderberger, Have a Good Bilderberger, sat down and planned it all out and said, "Oh, we're going to change the colors on an inkjet"? Or I would doubt the first inkjets that came out. They probably had blue, red, and yellow. I don't think they plotted and planned this. Reality, the dark part of reality, does these incremental little steps. And the minions and those that blame the secret societies, or whoever participates, Ellen, Donald Trump, whoever participates in this script is not laid down. This reality script is not laid down by people in the boardroom. The people in the boardrooms are facilitators of the script. They're manipulated by the script itself. So people didn't plot and plan that cyan and magenta would be used in a color wheel or a color box or a color cube in an inkjet. But I just think it's all part of a very inhuman, long-term, incremental plan. I can't point at it. So I have to say the dark part of reality itself to continually move what they call a human being, but we call a real spiritual person or a real man or a real woman, away further, even further away from itself or its true nature. What was said about a minute ago is worth repeating and is a huge differentiator between even many people and their belief set in our group. We'll just leave it at that. We all do agree we live in a reality script of some kind. What's the next act of the play? What's the next Kobe Beef Bryant that's coming? And it's all an act in the play. What's next? What do they have next planned after CV? Everybody here, you wouldn't be here. We live in a gigantic script. We all see that. But here's where we differentiate our opinions. To me, those in the boardroom, we'll just leave it, that represents Rand Corporation, Bilderberger, all the different groups, Trilateral Commission, Skull and Bones, Freemasons, all the people in the boardroom, to me, they facilitate a reality script that they did not create. They may tweak it. They may even think they created it. From time to time, or in certain situations. They may think, Ray Kurzweil may think that idea came from him when it didn't. The boardroom, to me, facilitates and implements the reality script. They lay the track of the demented, demonic railroad. But the script comes from somewhere else. Well, where, Matt? I don't know. Okay, we'll leave that for now. I've said whatever stands behind the screen, whatever it's dark. It's Christians would call it Satan. Whatever it is, it's nothing you can point at in a police lineup. We're not going to do that again. Do it again soon, I hope. I love that. But see, there's a segment here. Same thing. I'm not going to. I'll be very brief because I don't want to get into this for the millionth time. But the segment here that thinks that the secret societies are running around doing everything, then you must also believe or disagree with what I just said, that the boardroom creates the reality script. And I think we've seen enough. We've seen 10,000 impossible coincidences, all miraculously pulled off. We've seen the whole world put into a certain state over the last 2.5 years from A to Z in a way that no regular people could coordinate. The boardrooms facilitate the reality script that comes. They don't create the reality script. That is a major difference. And I don't know why the group of people here that believe the boardroom creates the reality script, the men and women just sitting around the boardroom smoking their Peter Stuyvesants create the reality script. I don't understand, honestly, why that group is still here, because it's so the 179.5 degrees of what my understanding of reality is. And I'm always going to analyze events and talk about what may be coming, like the presentation of the magenta or what happened in the subway of the Ukraine with Bono and the Edge. I'm always going to present my interpretation in terms of the screen, fluid reality, even Mandela effect. Something is laying down a reality script, and the boardroom and the secret societies are just players in that script, not creating the script. If you think the boardroom is creating the script, there's huge differences in opinion. And I do not understand why, if those people that are dug in there, why they're still here. In my room here, like I've said many times, I have thousands of sticky notes all over all four walls with no windows and a bricked up window. And not really, but let's just go with it. Every single sticky note has a major event that they've pulled off. This one says, oh, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo missions. I just hit a dart with that one. Over here, this one says Captain Hook, and then 300 other major events, according to Chuck P. again and again. And then this one says how they turn the entire world economy in a course of a 40-year period into literally a video game and something that's running on a supercomputer. The entire world economy is running and being fed whatever money, cash inflows and outflows, whatever's needed to be printed on a supercomputer, with every country, for the most part, perfectly tied in. I mean, just keep throwing the darts. So go back to the boardroom. Any of the major events, even something as simple as like let the first 200 bang events. Here's the boardroom. Let's picture men and women sitting around. Some are smoking their Peter Stuyvesant. Some say, "Are we going to have sandwiches brought in?" And it's like no drinking until after we decide how we're going to pull off the big 2001 7-Eleven. Go back to that. Go back. Then we'll do a double. We'll do the 2001 job application followed by a 1-2 punch of anthrax scare. How do they do that? It starts around the boardroom, right? It just starts with regular men and women. Somebody raising their hand. I have an idea. Oh, that's a good idea. We're going to try to pull that off. How do we go about doing that? Who do we phone up first? And then how do we get the other 60,000 people involved? It doesn't work, guys. If you just picture the boardroom right now. Picture men and women sitting around the boardroom. I picture Tommy saying, "I'll go out on the road for my dad." And you picture the boardroom. Okay, who gets the first phone call? How does it spread? It's not humanly possible. My God, do we have to keep doing this? If you think the boardroom is pulling every thousands and thousands of things off successfully, and it all starts with an idea at a boardroom and a couple people putting their cigarettes out in the ashtrays, we have irreconcilable differences is how reality works, and I have no idea why you're still at this channel. On the other end of the spectrum, you have, say, a Mandela effect person, somebody that has 5-10 major anchor effects, sees the world as completely fluid, or had an experience like Greg where something literally just changed in front of his eyes. I don't have to work that hard to convince those people. This girl over here says, "Matt, this fucking sun changed to me. It's white now," or whatever their anchor effect may be. Matt, you don't have to sell me. Calm the fuck down. The fucking sun changed overnight, or past reality. You don't have to work that hard. There's a whole series and host of shit going on here that can't be explained through normal or pedestrian means, or means that fit in between the reality bookends. If you're always searching between the reality bookends, that's of course what the dark part of reality wants us doing, wasting our time doing that bullshit research. Because if you research it long enough, you're eventually going to get to the bottom of it. No, these bottomless pits that are in sci-fi books and movies where you fall into it and there is no bottom, never come to the end. That is part of the reality we're dealing with here. Doesn't make sense via pedestrian and normal means. Before introducing our new Gold Star sponsor of this particular show, we'd like to thank our 3 long-term sponsors that still have Silver Star status with this particular show. Our first and original sponsor, of course, Marco Rubio Bubble Parties of Central and South Florida. Senator Marco Rubio Bubble Parties of Central and South Florida. What happens under the bubbles stays under the bubbles. 2, Joe Biden Deliverance Banjos. Joe Biden Inbred Deliverance Banjos with a new tagline, "Use one to seduce your sister today." And our third original sponsor, of course, is none other than Michael O. That's all I can say. Michael O's Tuck Guard underwear. When that thing absolutely has to be strapped down to the side of the leg and cannot come up, trust Michael O's Tuck Guard underwear. End of sponsored segment. The Annie Oakley Dakota Ring segment will be at the end of today's program. Back to the original theme as we came in. 2.5 years. These sons of bitches probably listening to me in real time. 2.5 years. These sons of bitches have imposed this upon the world. Now, first, the good news for us. There's good news. There absolutely is good news for us. We wouldn't go back. We have learned so much about the nature of reality that we have used to understand better ourselves. If that grammatically didn't make any sense, but who cares? I ain't going to re-record it. Understand more better blues ourselves. We wouldn't go back. These sons of bitches, it's the way the yin-yang reality works. They have to take big bites over here. They're behind schedule. You dumbasses, we're behind schedule. We got to do all this stuff and use all our magic dice, and we got to really go for it. Then all this shit on the back end has to be given away. And the people, I had a double failure family reunion. Reality wasn't given away to either a group of those people, but it was given away to us. And we wouldn't go back. No fucking way. Anybody that would say they'd go back, oh, Matt, to go back to the way the world used to be, and I'd give back whatever my understanding that I've accrued over the last 2.5 years, I'd give it back, Matt. I want the old world back. Then you're here for the creature comforts of this world. That's why you're experiencing life, or its creature comforts for whatever its success metrics it can bestow on you, and all its false two paths diverge into woods and all that. We see that this is just part of a much greater whole. In fact, again, there's probably an aspect of you, a spiritual aspect of you, looking right down at yourself inside the snow globe, peering at you from outside. And anytime you worry about it, or you get so stressed out about it, or your water bill is late and you're worrying about it, it's laughing its ass off at you. You'll kick yourself for we'll all kick ourselves for putting the stock we have into the little things that we've been worrying about and stress about. And that is my goal we might say, well, Matt, if we come to an understanding and it's only a half page as to how pretty much reality works, then why shouldn't we just throw ourselves off a bridge or touch risks with Justin Timberlake and give all our time to him? No, because there's still a lot of things. We might have a certain understanding, but there's still a lot to do. Like the 400-pound man still's got to get down to 210. For example, fear. There's so many stresses and anxieties and fear that I still have to work on dropping. And I have ways of doing this and little games I play with myself. But this takes years, and we're here to do the work, not just to have the understanding, if you see what I mean. At this point, having the understanding is easier than the work. We have the half page. Still got to do a lot of things. The 400-pound man on the couch, he's like, I'm not going to do any of it. I have the understanding how to do the intermittent fasting, what percentage of protein, fats, and carbohydrates should be on my plate, how many times a week I can have a glass of wine. He's like, I have the understanding, so I ain't going to do any of it. I'm just going to sit here and watch TV and keep the same 400 pounds. No, you got to go do it. You've got to, the quote from, in terms of fear and anxiety and things like that, I played it a few months back. It's that Nina Simone quote that's in that FKJ song. This guy is pretty amazing. If you ever look at YouTube, say FKJ, that's his name, just music. He plays 20 instruments. He electronically mixes all his music. Some of his piano stuff is just amazing. He worked in the Nina Simone quote that I reworked, and with my limited ability to remix a song on my Mac. I'll play it again as soon as I can on Free Voice. But somebody asked her in an interview, what does freedom mean to you? And she kind of takes her back for a second. She's not really ready to answer. She's like, no, what freedom means to me, no fear. She's like, that's not all of it. If I could just go half my life, no fear. That's the first thing. That's not all of it. We have more work to do. But that's the first thing. And she's saying, if I could just go half my life, but is there anybody, I mean, in all of human existence, that has ever walked out their door with no fear? I mean, not one fear. Even they say, it just popped in my head, I don't know these old legends and lores, but Gilgamesh or something had a tremendous fear of dying or something. He didn't give a shit about wrestling in Enkidu or whatever his name is, Aikido or Enkidu, the wild man, but he had the fear of dying. Or even the most strongest have this fear, and it's the repeating themes and archetypes, if that's even the right word I just made up for that particular sentence about Superman and kryptonite. There's always something. And we're never going to be perfect in this avatar, but when we walk down our hallway or walk outside, and worrying, I'm not just saying about fear of being attacked or something like, it's not physical. It's fear of the water bill being late. Stress is a type of fear. If you didn't have fear, you wouldn't have stress, anxiety, worrying about what your girlfriend's mother might think. That's all fear related. Of course it is. It's not just about, I'm worried about being attacked or something physical. It all stems from fear. So Nina Simone's like, if I could just live without fear just half my life. Well, Nina Simone, and not one person has ever truly gone one moment while dropping all fears, but we are in this body. We have limitations in the avatar. We don't have to be perfect. But in terms of, where can we get ourselves over the next 10 or 20 years in terms of no fear? Can we go from, in terms of fear of death and things like, I've gone from 80% fear where I just pretended I wasn't to literally I've cut that back to 40% or 35%, almost no fear of death relative to what I had. That's not, if somebody said, Matt, you got 2 weeks, of course, again, we all have limitations. We're never going to be perfect. But the fear of death for me was a huge thing. That moment I've told you about when I realized it came to me in one moment. When I was in my early 20s, we were down at Long Beach Island, and it came to me that you're mortal and you are going to die. And to me, that could be the end of existence, because I had at the time, no religion. I had no belief set. I had no spirituality, just a bunch of atheists running around preaching what they were preaching to me, growing up. And so it was terrifying to, 5 years before, if on a test, if someone said, Matt, are you going to die? Of course, I knew how to give the parroted answer, and I would say, of course I am. But I never truly believed it. It hit me in one moment, and it was terrifying. It was terrifying. But now, that would be 90% gone or more. Anyway, you see what I'm saying. We have to do the work, not just have the understanding. So, for example, you die and then you are talking to a part of yourself or whatever your religion may be, your spiritual self or higher self. It's like, yeah, I helped Matt and all of us out, in this crew. We all figured out basically the half page. We figured out who we really are. We didn't let that reality system down there hide us from ourselves. And we figured it out. So we're winners, right? And then whoever you're talking to or aspect of yourself or your religious, no, you loser. You didn't do the work. You still carry the fear and the anxiety, and you're worried about what your girlfriend's mother thought about you, and you're worried about little things and this and that. You didn't drop that. You didn't drop this. You didn't overcome this. You didn't overcome that. You didn't do the work. So what if you figured it out? That's the easy part. Oh no, what are we going to do? I'm going to put you back into a reality system like that, you dumb son of a bitch, and you go figure it out this time. Don't just tell me you figured it out. Well, that's better than what most people do. I hear you. It is better than what most people do. Most people down there, those delinquents they're not doing the work and they're not figuring it out. But that's only half the equation. If you open your mouth again, I'm going to put you back into that reality system 400 million more times. Now shut up and get back in there and do it right. Guys, you and I are here now. This is our opportunity. We don't have to be perfect. But when if you have a flaw, a big flaw, like I sent an email yesterday to Mark, I ain't going to get into the specifics, but I admitted to him something that is a completely irrational fear of mine. And it should be so easy to overcome, like a fear of spiders. It wasn't that. It was even more trivial. It's something completely ridiculous. But it's like, you know what? If we can't overcome that and do those basics, man, we aren't doing the work at all here. So you understand what I'm saying. Somebody's tapping at the glass. Sponsor. Yes, we have our gold sponsor. I'm talking to my producer. You want me to read that? Yeah, here, give it to me. Yeah, I'll read it. Yeah, I'll read it. Oh, she's handing it to me. Okay, you want me to read this? Yeah. Okay, gold sponsor for this show is the Nancy Pelosi Book of Haiku. The Nancy Pelosi Book of Haiku. Yes, I'm going to remind him what a haiku is. Stop it. Folks, our producer wants me to tell you, our haiku is a traditional Japanese poem of sorts. 5 syllables, 7 syllables in the middle, ends with 5. Okay? This is the Nancy Pelosi Book of Haiku. It's massive, folks. There's got to be 350 pages here. I'm just going to flip. Here's one of one of her works here on page 666, although it's only 350 pages. My ghoulish makeup, recycle me back, the Dems, a darkness complete. That is just one of over 20,000 Nancy Pelosi created haikus in this massive book that I'm holding in my hand right now. At the bottom it says, available in all Marshalls and home goods stores now through Halloween. The Anderson Cooper book of haiku is all magenta, and it's a thick book, but it has no haiku. The pages are blank, just all magenta. I wonder what that means. Let's talk briefly about one of my favorite topics, Star Wars being made bad on purpose because of the new Kenobi release. So let's just say we were 99% sure up until a year ago that Star Wars and the series are being made bad on purpose. We were more like 100%, but let's just, for the sake of this conversation and argument, let's just say 99%. With Kenobi, the new Kenobi and how bad it is, now we're 100%. Well, we were 100%. Now it's just 100.000, more zeros extending out to infinity. Look, 2015 was The Force Awakens. I'm not sure when I said it. It might have been just after The Force Awakens or a year and a half after. Maybe I'll just say I said it after The Last Jedi, which is 2017. I said, wait a second here. These movies are being made bad on purpose back to 2017, 2018. Okay. Now, that was a little strange to even myself at the time. Well, don't these companies have to make profit? It was a little weird, but it's been confirmed 1,000 times over at this point. Again, I'm only mentioning it for the 10th time. Matt, you've mentioned it 50 times. Okay. Because of Kenobi. Kenobi is so bad. I haven't seen it. The reviewers, one after the other, and they're showing 15 minutes of clips in each video. I'm seeing a lot of the series, watching the reviewers. There's plot elements that don't make sense, making one of the great heroes of the original Star Wars 3 and even into the prequels, the Star Wars 3 and then 6, making him into a complete, useless, mindless wimp. So here's what we have. The Force Awakens, absolutely horrible. The Last Jedi, horrible. Luke Returns, horrible. Whatever the last dumb one was called. The Mandalorian, some people liked. I haven't seen it. They're all so bad. I just can't. Little baby Yoda looks like a little plastic thing. Looks kind of more like Rosemary's Baby. The thing's it's in a mask the whole time. Boba Fett or whatever that thing is, the Mandalorian's in a mask. How do you really get behind a character you never see? It can't be that good. But we know the book of Boba Fett was one of the worst series of all time, and now this Kenobi is supposed to be absolutely horrible. I know many of you are sick of this topic. I'll really try to keep it under 4 minutes. But guys, it's not a thing where the fans are just disappointed. Like, I really wish they could have done better considering all the resources and the 1,000 creative minds they have access to. It's not like wishing they could have done better, and they just didn't. They came up a little short. I mean, there are huge mistakes made in these movies. Like one reviewer said they don't even carry forth how to turn the lightsaber on has changed. Like they don't even carry forth the original traditions of the movies that were so loved 30, 40 years ago, whatever. There's major holes in the plot that any 8th grader could catch. Major problems and mistakes that anybody would catch upon the editing or the reviewing. It's not just like, oh, I wish they could have done better. They're horrible across the board with huge gaps in logic. And so they're obviously being made on purpose. And I'll wrap it up here by just saying, you wonder what all the employees at Disney are thinking. You know, when I worked at the insurance company in Los Angeles, I've never said the name. I don't know why. It's like a secret or anything. I worked for Cigna. I guess they're still a big insurance company. I haven't been in touch with them for 20 years, but Cigna, like Aetna, was a big insurance company in California. I worked for Cigna. Disney was one of their customers, one of the top 5 big insurance companies in California. Disney was one of their customers. I've been to, I think it was Burbank, where they had the lot and the corporate offices. So there's like 1,000 people walking around that do different things. And then here's where they do the animation studios was here at the time before everything was computerized. This goes back to 96 and 97. So there's thousands of people running around working for the corporate office. And then that's where they call them Imagineers and all the creative minds. And here are the creative minds that work at Pixar. And they have all thousands of creative minds. So first off, they didn't have to just do all of Star Wars, hand it over to one or two people. That just doesn't make any sense. That's what just Kathleen Kennedy, just Jar Jar Abrams, just Rian Johnson. That makes sense if you want to put out a story, and then you can blame them. See, it was just these one or two people. They can be blamed. You would never turn it over to one or two people when you have access to 1,000 creative minds. What are these creative people at Disney that work in Burbank? What are they thinking when this horrible product keeps being put out? It boggles my mind thinking, what are they thinking? There's no way they could like it. These shows, I'm telling you, are horrible. Top Gun 2 or Maverick proves they can make a good movie. Dune, the remake of Dune a year and a half ago, proves they can make a good movie. Dune, to actually carry forth the feel of the first one, you know how difficult, and they actually pulled it off. It's pretty solid. It's not great, but it's very, very good. It's solid. To carry forth the feel of the original Dune, that is not what the 8th grade Dungeons and Dragons Club could do, where I say the 8th grade Dungeons and Dragons Club could easily put together a better story or storyboard than what these Disney people did for the last 3 movies, starting with The Force Awakens. Even the Peaky Blinders on television proves they can make good TV. They can make good movies. Obviously, Star Wars is being made bad on purpose. And as usual, I continue to watch the reviewers. I used to pick on the Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic. Now I'll pick on somebody named Robot Head, who's really funny. With his Australian accent, he reviews the Star Wars and makes fun of it. But none of these guys can see past one. They cannot even stretch their head around and see around one corner, let alone 2 corners. It's the same excuses. Disney doesn't know what they're doing. I can't believe the executives are still trusting Kathleen Kennedy. The writers are stupid. The writers are fighting with the fans. How many years can go by where these reviewers keep pulling forth the same kind of excuses, trying to make it fit into the reality bookends? They're made bad on purpose, obviously. Maybe 1 or 2 times they get it wrong. Then Disney would be in crisis mode, and they would have fixed the last one and brought in a whole new team and used their 1,000 creative Imagineers. Or maybe one series would be horrible, like Book of Boba Fett. And they would say, we can never do that again if we want to carry forth the profitability of this series for the next 30 or 40 years. It just keeps happening. And the reviewers keep going to their same scripts. Disney's getting it wrong. How could they be so stupid? I mean, I bang my head against the wall every time I hear these reviews. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. And someone like, well, Matt, they can see it. They know, as we know, they're made bad on purpose. But that's how these guys get their channels up to 350,000 subscribers, and that's what makes them money. And they're never going to go that far, Matt, because they make a lot of money with these big YouTube channels, and they probably would be blocked if they started saying things like that. No, I don't. They don't. Just like your normie friend or your cousin doesn't get basic things about what we see about reality. Your Norby friend doesn't understand there's a gigantic penis down in D.C., the obelisk. Where, they don't get those things. So these reviewers, they don't, Critical Drinker, Robot Head, they don't know that they're being made bad on purpose. That would mean they would see through the reality the way we see through it. But even though they're not going to see what we see about all the events we have broken down, it's still frustrating to us because at some point, what if it's 10 years from now and they've put out 5 more horrible series and 2 more horrible movies, and it just keeps happening over and over? I mean, is the Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic and Robot Head, are they going to say the same things? Are they going to make the same excuses? It's mind-boggling, folks. I know many of you are screaming at me, Matt, it's time to finally talk about why they're being made bad on purpose. I've never jumped into that fully. I've been very careful and conservative. But if I'm going to keep pointing out that they're being made bad on purpose, it probably is my responsibility to have a few theories on it. So let me collect my thoughts and come right back. In presenting different theories, let me just say this first. I don't know which one is right. Some of these could be completely wrong. We know they do things not just for one reason. There could be multiple reasons. Just throwing things out. Maybe we'll refine it a little bit better over time. Don't hold me to anything. And one or two of these may be really, really bad. But it is time to come up with some theories. I myself don't know where I'd place my chips at this time, but we got to start somewhere. Okay, number one, like I talked about on freevoice.io about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when will the next big fake in a cake in a lake mission be? If you're going to do you got to do something with Elon Musk sooner or later. All this talk of endless talk of Mars, endless talk of Mars, Mars, endless, all this promises. At some point, won't the normie ever say, you've been promising this for 50 years? And maybe they won't. Maybe they just have to keep extending the goalpost back until they have the normie merge into his cell phone mentally. But maybe but at some point you think they have to deliver something. Obviously, nobody's going to really go to Mars. Nobody's going to really go and get the ass to Mars. They probably already, like I said, they probably already have the movie made now. And if the technology increases 5 years, they'll remake the movie. They can present the movie whenever they need to. If people get restless and say, what is going on here? All this promise of Mars, nothing ever happens. Then the Whopper supercomputer will say to the Welcome to Bilderberger, home of the Bilderberger, will say, you got to show them something. It's time to fake the mission, time to cake in a lake the mission. So if you show them the mission, it's going to be super HD. It's going to be this incredible movie that looks completely real and lifelike. Now, the only thing people have to gauge that against is what they believe to be the highest level of sci-fi animation or sci-fi special effects. And Star Wars has always been the metric since 1977 for the metric of what special effects can be, or the highest level of special effects achievement. So not only you make Star Wars, the special effects are kind of cool, but they're not real. Like I said at freevoice.io 3 or 4 weeks ago, they're cool sometimes, but they don't look real. There's a difference. Real doesn't always mean cool. They don't go hand in hand. But maybe in doing that, you make the story just a complete mess too. So maybe that's part of it. They know more about the psyche of the mind than I do. I mean, maybe so in other words, the base theory is because people will see the perfect HD cake in a lake movie of Elon Musk's people going to Mars. It'll look perfect, so it'll look real. And then the only thing to compare that to is this horrible CGI that's been presented in all these as special effects in all of these movies. And my theory 4 or 5 years ago was the same here. The CGI is held back on purpose. They're not giving us the full realism they could produce in these movies. And the only reason for that is because at some point the mission to Mars, that won't really take place, but will really take place on the news. So then the comparison point, it'll be maybe they just have to be very conservative. Is this make sense to you? Is this reasonable, or am I just going way out there into crazy land? I think if they show you a perfect HD movie of Elon Musk's boys and girls getting the ass to Mars, and it will help if their best recollection on the highest level of special effects is a horrible Star Wars movies. And even Robot Head, there's a scene in Kenobi or something where Darth Vader walks out and holds a ship back with the Force or something, puts his hand out and the ship's trying to take off and holds it back. Even that just looks like a cartoon, and they have the ability to make it look 100% real. But they hold it back, in my opinion, because of what they will need to do in terms of sending. They'll use, as I've said at freevoice.io, they will use Mars before the moon, because there's a comparison point for the moon, or they have to recreate similar effects from the old. With Mars, it's a completely new environment, and they can basically just start from scratch without a comparison point. Of course, it's all cake in a lake, fake, of course. Nobody ain't going nowhere. And for a second, let's just stray off and do what we like to do. Could you imagine if anybody stumbled upon this video and said, wait a second, you think that the special effects of Star Wars are being held back and being made bad, as well as the movies being made bad. And all the executives at Disney are in on it to support what will be a fake, a cake and a lake mission to Mars. Are you some sort of lunatic? Could you imagine how absolute not one flew over the cuckoo's nest, we flew into the cuckoo's nest. I mean, it would be insane. But you know what? We've seen them pull off too much. Nothing in terms of the insanity realm is off the table with us anymore in trying to understand how these absolute creeps are doing business. The second reason, it just goes along with the general reality theme. The dark screen wants to destroy everything that was once good. Moves with the way they move with their planets or their astrology, or, this was the time period from the creep's perspective when there can be real creativity. And this can be good, and this can be fun, and this can be new and interesting. And then it's like, I don't know, the way they have to play out their script or part of their things I don't understand, part of their magic or part of their alchemy. Then you introduce it as good, and then when you destroy it, the magic of it is that much more increased. I don't know. It's like you give people in 1776, give them the purest thing to freedom that ever exists, and then work over a long period of time with a sick, inhuman patience to destroy it. For them to get the multiple destruction value in whatever the sick magic that they put out, I just observe. I don't know exactly how it works, but it seems to work this way. For them to really cap it off and to get the win that they're looking for, it can't just be destroyed right off the bat. The prisoner can't be imprisoned from day one. The prisoner has to be given freedom and then work to actually imprison himself or herself or go along with it. That's when they really got you. So it's all part of the same theme. So I don't understand the creepy motives at the highest level. That's not, I don't want to. But if all I'm saying is one explanation is it's part of that general theme. All boats rise in the tide. Well, this is just the Star Wars boat rising in the creepy tide during a time period of which all things need to be destroyed. Well, then why is Maverick so good? Because that is also that's related to one of their babies, isn't it? I haven't seen it, but isn't it related to Department of Defense, the Pentagon, wars, killing? That's their baby. Aren't they going to take care of their baby? You know what I mean? Like, that's the Pentagon, that's wars, that's not just far, far away, or that's just not creativity or storytelling. It's their baby. So maybe that's part of it. It's that simple. If it has to do with the wars in Pentagon, and that's then you'll get a good movie. I don't know. Why are a few TV shows good, like the Peaky Blinders? Maybe it's as simple as they have to make it look real. I mean, what if every single series, every one, was just horrible? I mean, just like Star Wars. I mean, at some point, how many more normies wake up to the side of reality or the side of the bed that we get up on in the morning? I mean, at some point, like, okay, this is pretty good and this is pretty good, but the rest sucks, but it's still, they're trying, and really these companies fight with the fans and they lose their way, and Neurotic and the Critical Drinker and Robot Head can keep running their same scripts. A few things have to be good, or it could completely break down, with the normie and say, so everything was really, really good in the 80s and 90s, even the TV shows, whatever. It was Cheers and Seinfeld. And just there's not one good thing for 15 or 20 years. At least if there's a few things, maybe that's just enough for the normie to believe it's real and people are trying their best. I don't know. Sports, I think, is easier for them to destroy because for most part they keep the game itself intact. Like, nobody likes the NBA anymore. I mean, not nobody, but come on. I mean, compared to what it was with Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and going back the Dr. J, 70s, 80s, 90s, it's destroyed. They do it. See, the game itself. Here's where I'm going. If they just went in and made the hoop 14 feet and the game looked ridiculous and the jump shot had to change, people would revolt and they'd put it back. I mean, or we're all going to walk out, and it would be exposed by doing things that they obviously would be looking to harm the game. So they harm it in other ways through the absurd, ridiculous salaries. Many contracts are renewed at about $30 million a year, sometimes for bums, complete bums. Other ways to destroy it is you make the players just not likable. I mean, Jerry Maguire kind of said it in that scene, like something changed, right? Like something changed in sports. It showed the guy being hauled off to jail, and he was with an underage girl or something in the movie. Yeah, they can make the characters of Dr. J, I mean, classy, gentleman. I mean, it's back in the day, Magic Johnson was extremely likable till he started playing this reality script, and you know what I'm talking about. To a degree, Larry Bird and Michael Jordan. Anyway, the characters now, see, they're not all loathsome, but they're not likable. They're just not. It's just, how do they do this, Matt? I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, so the game on the ground, the game itself, if you just isolate the parts of it, you have the great slam dunks and the skill and the speed. So the game itself is intact. You can destroy it in other ways. You can just also destroy it with technology, an overuse of technology, a damn strike zone box. No more arguing with umpires because it's digital down to the millipoint or millisecond. And the arguing with umpires is what people liked in baseball. The human aspect can be removed. That also destroys it. So it's easier with sports. NASCAR is slowly being destroyed as well. What the Saudis are doing to golf, all part of a script, all sports being destroyed. Everything that a 40, 50, 60, or 70, or 80-year-old thought was great in the past is being destroyed as part of their alchemy. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know any more than just sensing what's going on. I'm here to take care of myself and to do what I need to do in this life. But you understand what I'm saying. It's all part of their same alchemy, whatever that means. And it's just easier with sports. With arts and entertainment, then it's either a good product or a bad product. And if it went from really good products in the 80s and 90s to now everything across the board is bad, maybe some people would wake up to that, where you have to have some good mixed in with the bad, like Maverick, where in sports, the game itself is pretty much the game. But then it just seems like society in general destroyed it, or the sneaker contract revenue destroyed it, or the salaries and what these people became with them. They say LeBron James is just at about $1 billion, even surpassing Michael Jordan, I believe, or maybe he became the first billionaire. Tiger Woods would have until he, whatever happened with Elon. Her name was Elon, not Musk, but her name was like Elon and all that. He had to give her like $350 million or something. And even that seemed like a script, of course. But sports for them is easier to destroy because everybody seems Matt, that's just naturally where modern society goes. Of course, the technology is going to come in when it all could have gone away in a moment. People just, for some reason, the guy down the cul-de-sac of your cousin can't see that sports convention, they come out of the sport. Everybody would be for this. Every single person would be for this. But for some reason, your uncle or your cousin or your guy down the cul-de-sac just thinks this is just so impossible. If they really were out to please the fans and draw in more revenue, there'd be a sports convention. They'd all come back and say, we're removing 90% of the technology from sports because we're listening to you, the fans. So I could just come up with this on the fly, but they have no idea the fans would want this. Say, in baseball, we're eliminating the strike zone box and replay it, whether you're safe or out or whatever. We want arguing between the old-time baseball. We're bringing it back to you. We're bringing back to you old-time football, whatever it may be. The fans would love it. They're even doing it to NASCAR. Greg is a 35, 40-year NASCAR fan. I could say, Greg, who drove the Tide detergent car number whatever in 85? He would say, oh, Rusty Wallace or whoever. He would know. He just knows everything. He doesn't even watch anymore. It's all part of the general destruction theme. All right, to understand how reality itself works, let's just go back to the boardroom. If you're picturing the Tom Callahan's Tommy Boy boardroom with Bo Derek and Rob Lowe. Do whatever you need to do. Just it doesn't matter. You know what I'm talking about. People sitting on either side of a long cherry wood table. The Bilderberger boardroom. Bilderberger. Welcome to Bilderberger, home of the Bilderberger. I mean, whatever it may be. Okay, so someone would say that the master of ceremonies at the Feast of Fools would say, how are we doing on the destruction of everything that was once good for our magic and our alchemy? And yes, go ahead, little George. You give us an update. Go ahead. Stand up, boy. Stand up. We've destroyed sports. We've destroyed TV shows, movies, art, entertainment, music, and just list goes on and on and on. Well, really, we're ahead of schedule in all these areas. What haven't we destroyed? Somebody that rarely talks says, sir, their way of life. Oh, yeah. It's time to remember what we started with? 2.5 years. Was it from Schwarzenegger? 2 weeks. 2.5 years. They've been doing this to us. Maybe it is that simple. Somebody at the boardroom got a creepy idea. Yeah, we destroyed sports. Let's destroy their way of life. Agenda from Star Wars, Agenda 66, Code 66, Code CV. Roll it out now. Send word to all our stormtroopers, Code 66, CV. It's time to destroy their way of life. And where are we? 2.5 years later. The Code 66 from Star Wars goes back to the prequels, I guess, the third one with young, obnoxious teenager Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. They probably wanted Code 666, but that would be ridiculous. They got to hide it a little bit. They called it Code 66. And what happened were all the stormtroopers that supposedly were working for good or working for the Jedi, they just turned and in just a moment or like a mind-controlled instant, then they started killing all the Jedi working for Darth Vader and the evil parts of the Empire. Some mind control truth drop with the masses. All the masses are in that cloned. They're all kind of the same thing. An image of that same Boba Fett guy. Yeah, maybe there's a truth drop there. I don't know. But they probably really wanted the implement scheme number 666. But that would be, I don't know. Maybe they still want to pretend they're kid friendly. So whenever that camp pops up that thinks that just the men and women are running around doing everything, I would say go back to the boardroom. Just picture the boardroom. So just, again, 1,000 sticky notes on all 4 walls. Pick this one, the destruction of this sport, the destruction of this sport, the destruction of all sports. Let's just do that one. Picture the boardroom. Somebody has an idea, right? Because it's just men and women sitting around the boardroom. And by the way, which boardroom rules? Don't you think it'd be, if it was just men and women at boardroom and secret societies, there'd be like conflicts? The Trilateral Commission in their boardroom would think they're the highest authority, but then the Council on Foreign Relations, they be the highest authority? Well, Matt, it's the Club of Rome and the 300 and all this stuff, all these boardrooms thinking they have dominion and, Megatron fighting with Optimus Prime. But it doesn't matter. Just go back to any boardroom. Okay, the destruction of all sports. Little George or Jenny, yeah. Oh, yes, we will do that. This is a boardroom that took place, say, in the early '80s. We will start destroying all sports. What it is great now, people love these battles between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. We will take our time in inhuman fashion, destroy it over 20 or 30 years. Now think about it. What's the execution on that? The implementation on that for regular men and women? George or Larry down the end of the table, or Susan, start making your phone calls? How do you begin that? Let's say you're at the table and your name is Stan. I'll say, Stan, you've been your first big task here at the Bilderberger boardroom. You're tasked, and you have the full authority behind you and an endless deep pockets of the pentaveret, but you've been tasked to destroy all sports. Now go ahead and do that. Where do you start? Who do you call? You just one meeting at a time with referees, or who do you call? Well, obviously, Matt, you start with the chairman of each sport, and they're in on it too at the pentaveret. Okay, they bring in the Roger Goodell or these losers. Okay, but then we need the refs in on it. We need this person. And then we get the TV, and they're all in on it. And it's a pretty damn hard implementation. And somebody's screaming at me, well, that's why it takes 30 or 40 years, Matt. I hear you. But see, I'm of the belief that they're not getting messages, whoever is involved. Those you've heard me say this, and I'll close this one out the same way. They're on a frequency. What their goal is to tune people mentally to a frequency. So then, thinking they're doing the best they can, thinking they're not even understanding how they're serving the system or serving what's behind the screen. They get people into a frequency where they're susceptible to the download. They will start doing things that the system wants without getting exact marching orders, without getting little notes passed to them from the Illuminati window at the Chernobyl control center, without boardrooms and secret societies have to run around and everybody gets in on it. The whole bit, maybe people say, yeah, their NPCs matter and their NPCs are not the same as you and me, or they're young souls, or they're susceptible to the download or the frequency. They start doing what the dark reality wants without getting a note passed to them. Now, to me, there's too many thousands and thousands of things where the dark reality benefits, where everybody would have to be in on it, and here we go again. They will start doing it. The way I saw Tony, maybe it's a bad example, but I started asking him Mandela effect questions. I saw him give all his answers a certain way, and then he said, nope, I'm going to change all my answers. Well, he got a download of some kind. When I first told him about a certain question about a Mandela effect, if you build it, they will come, or whatever I said to him, the basic questions, he still was on our reality, what we try to hold on to. He got a download of some kind. He said, no, I'm going to change that one, and I'm going to change this answer, and I'm going to change that answer. And I want Uncle Smales, I want a hot dog, I want a ham. You'll get nothing and like it. He said, now that I think about it, it's if you build it, he will come. He went and changed all his answers. He got a download. And I don't know what it was. There's no other way I can describe it. He synced up to the new reality, to what the new reality wants, where even if you're not Mandela affected, you're trying to hold on to an old reality that's not sailing with the ship of fools. Nobody's getting marching orders. They're just doing it. Okay? That's obvious at this point. Thanks for listening.